10 random magic cards, day number 17. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Let's jump into it. Lodestone Mirror is our first card of the day. 4 mana for a 2/2 artifact mirror with trample. Tap an untapped artifact you control, and this gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This actually, you would think if it was ever going to see play, it would see play in the Affinity decks back in the day, but it never even did back then in Doze. You know, you could tap down your lands for this to like get a little bit larger. Till EOT, you could obviously tap down all your artifacts. There's a lot of those, you know, and just trample over something. But this really didn't see a lot of play because, like, your Affinity and you're paying a hard 4 mana for a card. Wait, no, dumb. So didn't really see play back then. But I imagine that there are some Commander decks that are kind of into this. It's still holding a whole solid dollar. Look at that. So I imagine some people are after it, but even in like the oops all colorless Commander decks you can get up to, I'm still not sure that this is exactly where you want to be, but you know, it's going to steamroll me like 2 weeks from now and I'm going to be like, okay, yeah, it's a fine card. So I'm actually going to give this like a 5.89. I think that's pretty close to being like really good if you can set it up. And obviously in Commander, it's not like that hard to set up, let's be honest. So decent card to start the day. What else are we getting? It's Street Wraith. Ooh, Street Wraith. Street Wraith, a good magic card, y'all. This is 5 mana, but you know, not really. For a 3/4 Wraith with Swamp Walk, but you can also cycle it and pay 2 life. So this is, I have actually seen this cast as a creature a bunch of times. I'm not going to say you never do that. And the Swamp Walk can be pivotal too. The fact that it doesn't die to bolt can be pivotal. You know, I've seen this be a real creature a bunch. So like that is a real dimension to the card, but this is mostly just like pay 2 life, draw a card. And that was bonkers. It's always been good. Sees play in certain formats like to this day, surprisingly. So, but pay 2 life, draw a card is, I mean, it's like Gitaxian Probe, you know? Like you don't pay any mana for this. You just pay life. Gitaxian Probe is like banned or something. So like, it's just when you're in that kind of company, it's really good. Obviously. So I think I have to give Street Wraith, like, and I'm serious here, like an 8.2. Like, it's so good. I'm tempted to go like 7.8, but I'm also tempted to invert that score and go like 8.7. But it's not quite that good. But some part of me also says like 8.2 is too low, and that like draw a free card is like close to a 10. But I'm gonna temper that and go somewhere in between and say 8.346 here for Street Wraith. That is a very good magic card. No one's gonna argue that, right? It's good. Next is Chromatic Star. Okay, I'll take Chromatic Star. That's fine. A single mana for an artifact. You can pay 1, tap, and sack it to add a mana of any color. And when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. Maybe, potentially, one of the first like eggs. You know, like when we refer to usually very cheap 0 to 1 mana artifacts that you can sacrifice, Chromatic Star is one of the first ones I think about. I don't know about anybody else, but Chromatic Star is definitely like first or third, you know, top 3 on my list of eggs. So really kind of a lot of history with this card too, and a massive role player throughout the history of Magic and a bunch of different, you know, decks throughout time. Whether we're talking Commander or like 60 card competitive 1v1 mono, whatever. So good Magic card, but you can't really score it too high. So I'm going to give this a 5.9, you know, somewhat narrow. Only certain decks want it, and it's not the best card even in the decks that want it, but it is an important card for getting sort of, you know, all the moving parts to start moving and keep moving. So we'll always like Chromatic Star. Next is an uncard. Those don't count. It's something Osaurus. Who cares? Day of Judgment is up next. Neat. 4 mana. You know what Day of Judgment does. It's Wrath of God. It's Wrath of God. 4 mana, destroy all creatures. It's a sorcery. It's actually kind of worse than Wrath of God just because it doesn't say that the creatures can't be regenerated. Who cares? Like 99 out of 100 times it's not going to matter. Functionally the same text. What do you score a card like this? What do you score a card like Day of Judgment? I feel like I'm just going to give this like an 8 as well. I feel like it's probably slightly worse than Street Wraith, yes. While still being obviously a card that you want to pack almost no matter what deck you're playing. If you know, that's not true. It's mostly control decks and like mid-rangey stuff and like the odd Commander build, right, that wants to stack this card. But that really does account for a whole lot of decks, you know. So many decks. So Day of Judgment, I'm going to put some respect on its name and give it an 8. Which I think that, oddly, I feel like some people are going to argue should be higher, but I actually think that just a blanket sweeper that doesn't have any sort of upside to it, just destroy all creatures for 4 mana, it's probably about an 8. Moving on to Mirror Works, 5 mana for an artifact. Whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2 mana. If you do, put a token that's a copy of that arty onto the battlefield. That's pretty good. 5 mana is a lot to get this into play. I'll say that much. Hey, does it have a cool? Yeah, it does have a cool. I own this card. I own this card because I own the Brothers War Commander set. I own both the Mishra and Urza's decks. So I've seen this card. I've read this card. I've held this card in my hand, and it's somewhere in this room, very likely. So I don't know where I'm like, ooh, what's this guy? Once I saw this version of it, I was like, oh yeah, you. I know you. Fun card, man. I can't say, even though I own these Commander decks, I can't say I've ever resolved this card, but definitely looks really cool if you've got the mana to invest into it. Just getting it onto the table seems like the hard part. But once it's there and you untap with it, you probably do some really evil, just combos and stuff. So yeah, man, seems okay to me. There's probably blasting station combos and stuff with this too, right? And Ashnod's Altar combos, because Altar gives you 2 mana. So if you sacrificing that artifact makes a non-token artifact enter for some reason, then you can just go infinite. I don't know. I'm cooking some stuff up right now. So when you start cooking like that, you got to give cards like this at least a 5.8. Again, really narrow in scope. And also an artifact. Really want you to play specifically artifacts. And so even though any deck can play it, it's really hard to get this to pop off. And you don't have to build your entire deck around it, but kind of a little bit. So I'm just going to give this, again, high 5s, something like that. Because a little narrow, but when it does hit, it hits hard. So we'll move on. Sylvan Safekeeper, printed in Judgment for the first time. Still pretty expensive, but if you get it from Modern Horizons 3, it's very cheap. A single green mana for a 1/1. Oh yeah, I know you, because I just saw you in Modern Horizons 3. 1 green mana for a 1/1 wizard. Sack a land. A creature you control can't be the target of spells or abilities this turn. This is very powerful. This is a powerful Magic card. God, look at that nosedive in price. Never say that reprinting cards does not affect, the price. I'm not sure that it affected the price of the Judgment or Commander 2014 or Commander Anthology copies. They probably stayed roughly the same, but Modern Horizons 3, $1.75 for a Sylvan Safekeeper. That's, a tenth of what it's worth from any other set, basically. So that's pretty good, man, to get this for really, really cheap. It's a great card. This is just a phenomenal Magic card that is good almost no matter what you're doing in green, right? If you are ramp or if you are playing some sort of Bogle strategy for Commander where all your dudes want hexproof and you're building your own battleship with auras and you need to protect your guys, obviously the real estate value goes up on this, but I think any deck with Forest could probably use this to at least protect their Commander, if nothing else. A single green mana is really, really good as far as the door cost on this. So I don't know, dude. I'm going to give it a 7.4. I think this is a fantastic, just really, really good card, dude. So play it in your green Commander decks. Moving on is Archivist. So this is 4 mana in blue for a 1/1 human wizard. You tap it to draw a card. Let's look at the Urza's Legacy one, because this is the one I'm going to be most familiar with. This did not see play back in the day, but then started seeing some play once Commander first became a thing. I don't think this is a thing anymore, though. I really don't think so. You don't see a whole lot of cards from Legacy that are 49 cents. That's because this obviously isn't on the reserve list. That's where a lot of Legacy cards are, right? But still, I really can't give Archivist too much of a bump, even though it's a solid Magic card. It's just way too slow of a Magic card. So I'm going to give this a 4.71, we're approaching average. And back in the day, it would have been better than that, but sadly not anymore. So let's move on to Nightscape Apprentice. Only ever printed an Invasion, and I love this cycle of dudes. A black mana for a 1/1 wizard. You can pay a blue and tap it to put a creature you control on top of its owner's library, or you can pay a red and tap it and have a creature gains first strike until end of turn. So pretty cool here. You can actually target your opponent's creatures with a first strike ability politically in Commander, which I think is cool, but you can also save your dudes or repeat into the battlefield triggers, and all this again for a really low door cost. the ticket to get in here is just a single black mana. And then from then on, once you untap with it, a single blue mana to activate it is really good too. So love this dude. He's only really available to play, I think, in like Grixis commander decks, and 4-color commander decks happen to have Grixis colors. So he doesn't go in everything, but I do think a lot of decks would have more use for this card than they think they might have currently. And it's neat that it's only ever been printed in Invasion. It's got cool art and stuff. So I don't know, altogether, I think it's cool. I'm going to give it a 5.28. Yeah, let's go with that. 5.28 sounds about right. I love this whole cycle, and they're better than people think they are. Next is Martial Impetus. Have I ever seen this card? This is 3 mana, 2 into white for an aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and is goaded. It attacks each combat if able and attacks a player other than you if able. Whenever enchanted creature attacks, each other creature that's attacking one of your opponents gets +1/+1 till end of turn. So if you put it on one of your guys, all your dudes get +1/+1. When it attacks, it functionally targets itself with that ability. Because it gets a static +1/+1. And then you can put it on your opponent's dudes, and it can no longer attack you forever. So that's kind of neat. I don't know. I don't know if I like this or not. I think that it's kind of neat in Aura's decks, where, again, it has that modality on it where it can be a functional removal spell. I kind of like that, like a pacifism kind of effect. Goaded is a cool ability in that way. But this is one that I'm actually kind of struggling with more than I have, like, I feel any other card in the history of this series. I usually don't stun lock or just, like, not talk for 3 seconds at a time. But this one's actually kind of tough because I feel like it deserves, like, right at, like, let's go 4.9. But I think I might get some pushback. I think there might be people in the comments feel like this is, closer to a 5.6 or something. But I really don't think it's there. I really don't. So I'll move on to final card of the day. It's Green Seeker. We're hitting a bunch of pretty cool cards today. A single green mana for a 1/1 elf spell shaper. You can pay a green, tap it, and discard a card to search your library for a basic, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. I love Green Seeker. I have played this card a whole bunch in my life. Way back when it was in Standard, during Time Spiral, I've tried to make Green Seeker work in Reanimator decks. And if you are playing green in kind of a Graveyard Matters deck in Commander, Green Seeker is surprisingly decent. It's just, again, a single mana. A lot of these are so cheap to get in on the ground floor of, which I like about this particular video. A sucker for 1-drops, but, again, in Commander, the starting cost on this is very, very cheap. And the ability to have, a card that fuels your graveyard every single turn allows you to put key cards in there and get some sort of benefit from doing that. And its activated ability is incredibly cheap and gets you your land drops, helps you fix your colors. Like, everything about Green Seeker is actually pretty sick, so I love this card. It's only really, really ever been printed in Time Spiral and remastered. And I think it should have more printings. This is a cool card, dude. So I'm going to give Green Seeker a 6.2, and a little bit of bias personally is going into it. But if you haven't tried or seen Green Seeker, play this card. Does it not look good? That's because it is good, I promise you. But that is all the cards for Wednesday. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Thanks and bye.